joint session of the Provo Municipal Council and the Provo School Board to order. Today is Thursday, September 2nd. Time is 12:04 p.m. Meetings of the Municipal Council are now being held in hybrid fashion. That is, members of the public may continue to view council meetings on YouTube and Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber at the Provo City Center. However, because coronavirus infection rates have risen to high levels again, some council members, staff, and presenters are opting to participate via Zoom. The coronavirus pandemic is not yet over. The Delta variant of COVID-19 and infection transmission rates are again high, particularly among unvaccinated persons. Getting an echo here. We encourage everyone who is eligible to get vaccinated. We encourage all people to protect themselves and others. Still getting that echo. Do we know where that's coming from?
Cliff, it looks like it's from your room. Can you mute yourself when you're not speaking?
Is that me still?
It has been, yeah.
Is that better?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We encourage everyone who's eligible to get vaccinated. We encourage all people to protect themselves and others by following the protocol set by the CDC and our state and local health departments. Please stay safe and be kind. This meeting is being broadcast live on the web on the Provo City Council YouTube channel, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking so as to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. Let's state the names of council members and school board members present. Let's see, from what I can see, we have Councilors Harding, Ellsworth, Fillmore, Shipley, Handley, and I think that's it from the council side. Did I miss anyone?
Just yourself.
And myself. Yes, I'm here too. Thank you, Councilor Sewell. And then from the school board, we have Jennifer Partridge, Melanie Hall, McKay Jensen. Let's see, going down my rows here, Jerry McCabe. And then we have various members of the council and school district staff joining us as well. Did I miss anyone?
Nate Bryson.
Nate Bryson, sorry, Nate.
And Gina Hills.
Gina Hills. Yep.
And Gina Hill, sorry. Okay. All right. So I've got to get my agenda back up on the screen here. The opening prayer for today's joint session of the Council School Board will be offered by Councilor Bill Fillmore.
Our beloved Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the opportunity we have to meet with our colleagues on the school board. We pray that Thy Spirit will attend us. And we thank Thee for the opportunity and privilege we have to serve our city that has such a significant role to play in Thy affairs. We ask, Father, Thou will please bless the students in our system here and our teachers, that they might be protected from the virus and other ills and accidents. We pray that Thou wilt bless us as a city council, Father, to make good decisions in behalf of the long-term future of our citizens. Pray that Thou be with us now for the hour we have together. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions, or in this case, also the school board, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. remember to mute and unmute your microphones as needed. All right, the first item of business is an update on safe routes to school and related school transportation questions. And I show this as being presented by Rob Hunter and Shane Winters.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick presentation. Rob, I'm going to have Rob do a quick presentation. Rob has been intimately involved from the Provo engineering department and coordinating with Alex Judd from the school district on the Safe Routes to School program. I've asked Rob to go ahead and put a quick presentation. I think we got about 10 minutes on the agenda. And so Rob will go ahead and provide an update to what has been done in the last year from the Safe Routes to School program. So I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Rob.
All right, thanks, Shane. So it's I've got a few slides to go through here. I wanted to give a kind of an overall presentation of what we did, which was quite a bit, but understanding that we're limited time, y'all have a lot of items to get through. I'll try to go through these slides pretty quickly. And there we go. So we followed the processes laid out in Utah State Code and the Utah MUTCD. There's the school district organizes a school traffic safety committee. The representative from the district has been Alex Judd, who's the assistant superintendent, who's also here on the call, assistant superintendent over the elementary schools. And I can't stress enough how invaluable he has been in getting this organized. When the school safety committee is organized and is running well, there's a huge difference in terms of being able to not only get feedback from each of the schools, each of the community councils, but also be able to portray that back to the schools. And Alex has been great this last year in getting it all organized and getting us all on track. So Alex has been the district representative. From Provo Police. We have Sergeant John Norgill, who's the sergeant over the school resource officers. From the city administration, we've had Dixon Holmes, who's the assistant CAO, and then myself as the transportation engineer for Provo Public Works Engineering. And so each of the community councils, we reached out to them, or better, Alex reached out to them and we gave them the opportunity to submit their safe route plans and any requests they had regarding that safe route plan to the committee back in November. In addition to what we received from the schools, we talked through, and on the engineering side, we went to all the schools, looked at everything that we had in terms of safe routes, signage, crossings, did additional studies just on our own, and then police also had some requests or questions that they had us look through. So not only did we look at what the schools had, but we took some initiative and kind of looked around and said, what else do each of these schools need? And then we met monthly during the school year to discuss. There were some studies that needed to be done on our part. We went through those studies. We met about once a month to discuss what we had found, maybe some of the constraints we had in terms of what we could or couldn't do, and talked as a committee about what the best plan for each request and for each school was going forward. And then once we got to the end of that plan, we met with each of the elementary schools and presented to them what the plan was in terms of any safe routes improvements that would be made along their designated safe routes. And then our plan is to repeat this process, same process annually, so that we make sure that each school is getting back to us and has an opportunity to update the plans or make requests and have that organization set up to where we make sure that we are getting back and responding to each of those schools and community councils. So the results from that overall, as a committee, we initially received requests from 5 out of the 13 elementary schools for changes to be made to crossings or to sidewalks or different things. In the end, after the feedback from Alex, the police, and just looking at it ourselves, we actually made improvements to to crossings at 11 out of the 13 elementary schools, so more than what we had just initially received. This included 24 new school crosswalks. Sometimes that was just changing out a regular crosswalk to the high hazard additional signage that is required for schools, but about half of them were brand new crosswalks. We put some ADA ramps along the safe routes, existing safe routes crossings. We created a new concrete refuge island at one of the crossings. We'll go over that, and then added a new left turn pocket and refuge island at another crossing, and I'll highlight that one. But you can kind of see here on the map, it just kind of shows there were improvements that were made throughout the city, all over the city. So on the crosswalks, just a couple of examples here. There was one on 700 West out back behind Franklin where the school had been crossing kids already. And so we went out and we did not have a marked crossing for them. So we went out and put a marked crossing. Another example is the one off to the right here, which is at 460 South and Utah Avenue, I believe is the intersection where it had existing just standard pedestrian crossings, and we marked the legs that were being used by the school children and especially where it was crossing guards already were out, and did that with the high hazard additional, more visible markings, and put all the advanced warning signs, made sure it was marked as school crossings. And then on pedestrian ramps, if you look at the bottom image on the right-hand side, that's the ADA ramp that we're talking about. This was an older intersection where it was just standard curb, 6-inch curb all the way around. So we went and lowered that down to make that handicap accessible. This is a crossing at 600 East and Center Street, where we have received requests to make that a safer crossing. So we went out and put a concrete refuge island out in the middle of the crossing that'll create a safer spot behind curbing where kids have a refuge kind of halfway through the crossing. And then we did additional advanced warning signs back before the crossing to make motorists more aware that this was coming up. And that giving them advance warning that they were about to enter the 20-mile-per-hour reduced speed zone. Another example is we had been asked by the community council at Amelia Earhart to take a look at this crossing. There were, if you look to the left, the picture to the left, that's what it has been, where there was no separate left turn lane for left-hand turns onto the street that Amelia Earhart is on. And what was happening is cars, because cars were stopped waiting to be able to make the left-hand turn, there were a lot of motorists that were jutting around those stopped cars at the last minute, using the bike in the parking lane to jut around last minute. And it was creating an unsafe condition because they weren't able to see around until the last minute when they were jutting around, seeing that there were kids crossing. And so we are currently out there. It's tabbed, should be painted within the next week to add this left turn pocket. It pulls the separation further back to where there's a longer distance for them to be able to see kids in the crosswalk. There's still the 20-mile-per-hour reduced speed zone sign, but we made that distance workable for a regular 35 miles per hour, assuming that they haven't slowed down. That's the recommended sight distance, creates that additional sight distance to where there's not the stopped car in front of a through car within that distance. And it also, if you look at the left-hand area where the crossing is on that right picture, it also creates a median refuge there in the middle also. Another example of a request is at Provo Elementary, because of changes that were made to the campus and the changing where the entrance was to the parking lot. It created a condition where people trying to turn left into that parking lot it was right at the same location where the existing crossing was. That is also a 20-mile-per-hour reduced speed zone. So we were asked to move that north. We moved further away to where it wasn't, turns and everybody's trying to get into the driveway at the same time the kids were trying to cross. So we moved that up to the next intersection. We put in new ADA ramps. We put in new signs. We moved the crossing. The only thing that we are waiting on, we have been dealing with a lot of lead times on, there's a lot of construction materials that have caused delays for a lot of construction activity. But the one that we're waiting on in that particular case is we're waiting for the solar assembly for the flashing speed zone sign. And we're anticipating we'll get that and be able to put it together and out there within the next 2 weeks. But I've been out there personally a couple of times to talk to the crossing guard, and it seems to be working well, but we'll get that finished up within the next couple of weeks. Another one that came up separately from our I guess reaching out to the schools is we had the community reach out and has reached out in the past also and let us know of this ponding that you'll see in the upper picture that has happened at the crossing 800 North and 700 East. And our road rehab guys are out there right now. This is a current picture, I think, from just yesterday, prepping that to put in a storm drain system and redo that intersection to where it will no longer pond right in the middle of the ADA ramp. So that should be finished up within the next couple of weeks also. Here's just a very quick summary of all the things that we told the schools that we would get done this year for additions to their, changes, improvements to their crossings. As you'll see, all the ones that are marked Y in the complete, those are 100% done. The 4 or 5 that have an N, those we are still working on. All those should be completed soon. But like I said, with the delays in multiple construction materials, we weren't quite able to get done before school started. But we've got things set up to where it's a good condition in the interim, and we're finishing up within the next few weeks. Some of the ongoing challenges that y'all may know about is there's an ongoing kind of staffing, crosswalk staffing issue. It's hard to get people that want to staff all the crosswalks that we have. We worked with the school district, the police worked with the school district, talking to all the schools, trying to get not only the word out to encourage family members, parents of the school children, letting them know what the shortage was, and trying to get people that way, but also if there were staffing gaps in the staffing at a particular school, to identify staff that could also be trained and could go and do it on an interim basis while the crossing guard was out. And so we're working through that. It's been working. My feeling is, or my perception is, working pretty well, but there's still some issues that the Provo police are trying to work through in terms of getting everything staffed. And so this may be an ongoing thing that we'll need to take a look at year by year. And then there's some larger projects that we're trying to get done, but we're still working through finding the funding, and especially all these would require additional property acquisition for some of larger projects that have been ongoing, been asked to be done. 600 South sidewalk in front of Sunset View Elementary, Geneva Road sidewalk along the north end for the Lakeview Elementary, and then a 2230 North signal to get into 2320 that both feeds Centennial Middle School and Rock Canyon. Like I said, we're still trying to get property acquired and get the funding to fund some of these larger projects, but we're continuing to work on that. So that's the end of my presentation, but we're happy to take any questions that y'all may have.
Melanie?
Just my question is, as you were talking about the cross guard shortages, is there something you could send out to us as board members that we could put out on like Facebook and things to help encourage others around us to fill those gaps?
Sure, I'll touch base with Sergeant Orgill, and I'm sure he would be happy to get you, to get you wording something that you can send out.
Okay.
So absolutely, Melanie. I'm going to tell you, whatever the school district can do to help us, we will absolutely accept it. Our police department is having some some really hard challenges. Again, they have reached out to us in engineering to see. It was an ongoing discussion. Can we start reducing the number of crossings? And that was a lot of the discussion the last year, is can we start to reduce these? Oftentimes we get a lot of requests for more crossings, but it becomes very difficult if it requires a crossing guard. And so we went through that exercise. I think we're in a much better place than we have been, but any help, absolutely. Anybody on the council, anyone that would be willing to reach out to help the police department staff these, absolutely. We'll provide that information to you.
Terry?
I just want to have a big thank you to Alex and Rob and Sergeant Orville for working on this and doing a really good job over the past year. They've done a lot of good things, and I want to say thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Dave Harding?
Thank you. Let me just echo what Ms. McCabe just said. The very first civic engagement that I got involved with when I first moved in was the safe routes to school issue, and just by asking questions, I ended up on community council, and every year I was there, our biggest issue was safe routes to school, and there was some frustration with gaps in the process, and even 8-10 years later, I felt like I was hearing the same concerns about those gaps, and I could be off, but my impression is that report showed more progress on these concerns than I've seen in the last 10 years, and so I'm thrilled to see that progress. I am thrilled to see the indications that we're going to go through this process every year. That's really exciting. And just hats off to everyone that went through the process this year. Hats off to those who have been involved in the last 10 years, kind of trying to get to the point where we're at now. It's just great job, everyone. And then let me just kind of float broadly. What I've heard from comments from the council, and we haven't taken an official vote on this, but comments from the council, I feel like perhaps the council would support a greater prioritization of our sidewalks, of our infrastructure for these things, and specifically making sure that our children have a safe way to get to school. And so I think this is a great step forward, but just signaling support and perhaps even greater support, where we have to balance priorities, but I feel like this has been a rising priority for many on the council. So great work on this.
Thank you. Melanie?
Okay, so my other quick question is in regards with Provo High School and Timpview High School. I know at Timpview we're having, major parking issues and things like that, and we're having, are we putting in a sidewalk or a crossing guard at any of these schools? I also know at Provo High School on the first day a kid got hit. Are we concerned about any of those things?
So we're going to be meeting with I believe we've got the principal that's coming right after this, and Mark, and so we're going to be talking about Timpview High School in particular and what we need to do up there. So yeah, we're in discussions as to how exactly we need to move this forward. We had started to put in a crossing across Timpview, and all the kids were going a different way. We're kind of where we have left it, and maybe we'll have this more of it figured out by the end of this meeting that we're having today. Is kind of seeing, I think everybody's getting used to with all the stuff that's demolished right now and in the works there at Timpview High School. We're trying to figure out, let everybody settle into what is their routine, where is everybody coming from, what is their routine, and then that'll help us determine where is the best place to put these things, because especially within the first few days, it was changing every day as people saw, well, I'm stuck this way, so I'm going to go this way. It was a moving target. So we'll talk with them today, and we'll figure out what we need to do in terms of Timpview High School. In Provo High, There are crossings that are there. And I know that was one of the questions that had been forwarded to us about a potential for a roundabout or a signal. And I'm not sure in particular which intersection we were talking about. And maybe somebody can clarify. The one thing about Provo High School also is that we are completing right now. We're finishing up the section of Lakeview Parkway that will connect Center Street up to 620 North. That's going to take about a year. We're building 2 bridges with that, so it's a longer project. But once that is done, we fully expect that that's going to also change how people approach Provo High School. And so what we'll need to do is get that complete, see how people are coming in, and then again we'll have to assess again what additional items may we need around Provo High School.
And Melanie,
All right.
I know Timpview High School is a challenge for the district right now. We're very aware, kind of how it's constructed and phasing and being reconstructed. So I can't tell you from our side, we're trying to be very helpful and very accommodating for the school district and reconstruction of that high school. I know it's a priority for the district. So we're trying to work through some of the transportation challenges, and we are being very flexible and willing to help with that. Because I get it. I get understanding as it's a challenge to completely reconstruct a high school and keep that going at the same time. So just realize we're very sensitive to that.
All right, thank you very much. We probably better move on to the next item. Item number 2 is a discussion on Provo census data and reapportionment. This is to be presented by Cliff Strachan, our Council Executive Director. And Cliff, we're already 15 minutes behind schedule, so anything you could do to help us catch up a little bit would be appreciated.
Okay, well, I'll do my best. I'm not sure who asked for this and kind of what you're interested in, but let me just quickly go through this. And somehow I've lost there we go, from the beginning.
That was me, Cliff. I asked about it.
Okay, so let me just give you an overview. The 2020 census took place April 1st, 2020. As most of you know, they've been behind. The information is still coming. The data we have shows that Provo had a 2.38% increase in the population since 2010. That's below the projections that we've had, but we also think that we suffered because of the pandemic, and I think a lot of college towns did, in that many of the people that would otherwise be counted had already gone home. Based on some discussions with Utah County Elections, they are expecting to receive census block population data this fall. That will cause them to make changes to the various precincts, et cetera. And they have to match state defined boundaries. And as you know, the independent redistricting group and the state legislature are working on their changes. Obviously, there'll be no changes before this year's elections, but whatever gets adopted will affect the school district elections next year. And we're told to expect significant renumbering of the precincts. The window for our work on this is basically November of this year, and I would anticipate late November through March. And then there'll be some time to work through it, and we expect a public process, and we haven't worked it all out with the council yet, but this is still the preliminary. But just note that 9 years ago, the council adopted the maps in July of 2012. Reapportionment, what it looks like, you can look at the screen yourself and see what's there, but basically we anticipate districts for the council to be about 23,000 people, which is up about 500 and a bit from the current. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see what happens if we have to be
Cliff,
within
we
a 5%.
can't see your screen. You need to do your screen share.
Oh, I thought we had done that. Okay, hold on a second. I had not seen the share. Okay. Give me a second here. Okay, here's where we were. You'll see that the margin, depending on whether we have to have 1% or a 5% margin for the districts, you'll see where that is. The school district folks will be interested. They have 7 districts. And if the city were to get rid of the 2 citywide and go to a 7-district model, we would have the same numbers. But your districts this year will average 16,452 for next year's election, and then the plus and minus 5% and 1% are showing on the screen. And then back in 2011, 2012, our GIS and computer folks put together these redistricting maps, and we were able to, general public and everybody were able to go in and play with these maps. These are still actually online now, and you can go back and play with them. You start to see how complex redistricting can be. A couple of things you might want to think about is that when there's several principles that apply to elections when you're doing that, things like compactness, recognizing where incumbents actually are, trying to keep communities of interest, avoiding gerrymandering, these kinds of things. So there's a lot of parameters to be considered, and although it hasn't been authorized by the council yet, I would be very surprised if we did not have some kind of public maps to gather input as we did. And as you see in the red, highlighted in red above, in the middle of those, the perfect plan somebody named was adopted by the city council. The plan balanced was adopted by the city council for the school board. And I don't remember what the vote was, but in 2012, the city council's plan, the current setup of 5+2 was adopted 4-3. And so it was never really anything perfect, but this is where we're at. So if you have any questions, I'll hold on to them, or I'll answer them. If not, just wait for an update later on this fall.
Okay. So one of the reasons I wanted to know this is I know that in the old census data, there were 3.4 children per household. Do we know if that has changed with the new census data? Because that will help us determine when we need to build a 3rd middle school.
Okay, that's good to know where that direction is. The data that we could find, John and I both went looking online trying to find the data. We don't have that detailed of data yet. So when it comes out, you'll have to wait for that. But again, they're late, and I don't know when all their real detailed information will come out. We could only find, we both could only find our population data at this point.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 3, a discussion about the impact of growth and development on schools. That sounds like an ambitious topic. This is to be presented by Shannon Ellsworth and Jennifer Partridge.
Hello. Is Jennifer, where's Jennifer at? Oh, there she is. Jennifer and I had a conversation a few weeks ago. Well, I guess it wasn't even a few weeks ago. It's probably a few days ago about, and it wasn't a full-fledged conversation, so we're interested in your thoughts. What I'm curious about the demographics in our schools, the demographics in our community, how different schools might be struggling, and how the city could support those struggling schools. And the reason I bring this up is because in certain parts of town, there are a concentration of Title I schools. There are concentrations of really high percentages of kids on using free and reduced school lunch. And in other districts and other cities, the district comes to the city and says, hey, we're concerned about this school. It's reaching a certain threshold of free and reduced school lunch. Let's talk about how we can create some solutions through different avenues to kind of mitigate or balance the issues that school might be seeing. So that's the conversation that I had with Jennifer. What do you want to add?
I think you covered it all, and yes, just love to hear everybody's thoughts. Maybe, and Keith, I didn't talk to ahead of time, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Just to kind of share with council, especially Title I schools that have the higher amounts of free and reduced lunch. How does that affect a school? How does that affect education? Why would we be concerned about having high numbers?
So first of all, maybe I can address that from the standpoint of which are our highest Title I school, highest poverty schools. So our highest one, probably no surprise, would be Franklin. And Timpanogos is also one. Spring Creek is very, very high. Provost follows Spring Creek and Provo Peaks as well. So that's 5. We have 2 more, which are down in Southwest Provo, which are Sunset View and Amelia Earhart. So those are our Title I schools, 7 of them. The elementary schools, we have 13 elementary schools. 7 of our elementary schools are Title I. Generally speaking, you're going to have a poverty population in those schools somewhere around 50% or more. And in the case of Franklin and Timpanogos and Spring Creek, for example, we have had numbers in there as high as 80 to 90%, depending on the school and the year. I'm just speaking about the years that I've been here in Provo. This is year 10 for me. And so I know it can vary from year to year, but that's kind of an overview of where our schools are. The impact of that is essentially, we rely on Title I to provide a little bit more funding for students who otherwise don't have it. We had a debate in our senior council here a few years ago about an issue about how to use Title I money. And it was essentially, we have one school, I won't mention it, in the district that has the lowest free and reduced lunch rate in the entire district. And as such, as a more affluent school, we have parent groups there who are willing to organize and raise money. And we have more donations that can come in from different organizations or individuals within that school's boundary. You compare that to some other locations, and it's harder with more poverty, it's harder for parents to be able to generate the kind of money that would equalize the opportunity for our more impacted schools. So that's one of the impacts, is just the availability of funds to do things. And that would be anything from, converting a room to a space lab for STEM purposes. Parents have done a lot of that. I've pitched in district money on those now, but the original process on that was that it would be done by parent involvement. Well, if you're only going to do it by parent involvement, maybe our Title I schools don't get that opportunity. So there are curricular impacts, there are social impacts, there are certain things that more affluent schools and communities can do. We have, when we talk about free and reduced lunch, we generally don't talk much about food itself. We have had some very kind donors, Dan Campbell being one of them, who has brought in about a year and a half ago, he brought in about $35,000 of donated funds for us, and we distributed that throughout the district. And we have our Title I schools, most of them have what's called a principal's pantry. And so if they know of a family that is struggling either with food or other things, it might be clothing, maybe even medical bills. There are limits to the amount of money that we do have, and also the groceries that we're able to collect. But we're able to at least pitch in a little bit. It's not uncommon, and I would especially target Timpanogos Elementary School. I've been there on Friday afternoons when there are bags of food, canned food, that are being handed to students for them to take home for the weekend. So those are some of the impacts of the poverty situations that we deal with. And so, the answer frequently is money, but I mean, I know that as a public entity, the city has similar challenges regarding funding that we do. But Jennifer, does that more or less answer your questions, give that perspective?
Yes, yeah, that's great, thank you. And our schools have definitely become places generally where teachers are doing a lot more than just teaching academics. They've become counselors and things like that, and there's just more impact on that end as well in our Title I schools, more needs for that as well. Go ahead, Shannon.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that Jennifer and I discussed, and I'm really appreciative of Keith for bringing some of that information to this discussion, but a lot of the housing types that are conducive to like moderate income or affordable housing are being concentrated in these areas where the schools are already heavily impacted by lower incomes. So I think that's a joint discussion that I'd like to invite some of the school board members to our housing committee to discuss, because this imbalance that we may be exacerbating with our housing types is not going to be improved if we continue to develop a certain type of housing adjacent or within the districts of these already impacted schools.
Well, if I may, the school board, and I'm just speaking from my perspective here, I'm not speaking for any school board members, but I'm guessing a couple of years ago, former City Councilman Dave Connect came and presented on some of the concerns that he had identified about homes that are being used to house many, many, many individuals, way more than what was originally conceived when the home was built. And that does present a challenge to us. We're happy to serve all kids that come to us, but it's very difficult to plan and anticipate when a single family home is actually now being occupied by 4 families. When that happens on a regular basis, it completely changes our ability to plan for and respond to the high numbers of students that otherwise we would not be expecting.
Bill?
Hi, yeah, before we move on, I'm trying to get my head around this. I'm a little surprised to find out that more than half of our elementary schools qualify for Title I. And I'm curious, I don't know if you can even tell me this, what percentage of those families that are at or below the poverty line are what I'd call college couples? That is young married couples where one or both spouses are going to school here.
I would have to seek out that information. I don't have that at my hands right now.
I mean, that reality of our college demographic here impacts that poverty calculation, right?
It does to some extent, yes. When I first arrived here, I had made the assumption that we had far more of those in our system that ultimately it turned out that we did. I asked for kind of a deeper dive into our Title I so I could understand that. This was several years ago. Where we are now, all I can tell you is my impression is that things have increased from a poverty standpoint, not involving the families you're talking about, Bill. But I would have to go back and actually tear into that and see if we can find that data itself.
Is that data broken out in terms of ethnic groups at all?
I don't think so. We get this based on our free and reduced lunch applications, and there are certain things that can and can't be asked in that. But with the change, federal lunch it is a federal program, school lunches, and so with the change of administrations over the last few years, I'm not sure exactly what that form looks like anymore. It does tend to shift from time to time. So, but I can look into it for you.
Yeah, I mean, it would be of some interest to know how that breaks out.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
McKay?
I think to Bill's question, some of that data is actually difficult to get, but overall we can see the trends of married student housing that's being prepared by BYU. it's going down. We're getting so Keith's experience where he expected this, that sort of the children of people in college, it's also being moderated by, there's various access. So MTech is going to have more programs. They're not traditionally thought of as in college, but nationally, the percentage of students who are in poverty, that percentage is increasing nationally. More and more, the demographic of a child is just getting poorer nationally overall. So right now we're 20% nationally. Here in the district, we're 36% economically impacted students. As we see that impact in, for example, in 2010. There was 9% of Timpview was economically impacted. It's approaching about 29 or 30 now, and that's in Timpview, or 30. I believe it's above 30%, with Provo High being in the 40%, 40 to low 40s range, and so students overall are just are growing in that. Why that is goes to some of the larger trends in our nation overall, that children just happen to be, it goes to some of the same things of why, first-time home buyers are getting older, college graduates aren't moving out, some of those other things, but children overall are getting poor. And so it's a situation that's just growing slowly in a certain direction, which is an interesting fact.
Okay, thank you. That's frankly, those numbers are a bit alarming. I'd love to take a deeper dive on that sometime with you or somebody.
Back to you, Shannon.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what McKay was saying. When you say students, you mean K through 12 students are experiencing higher percentages of poverty nationwide. You're not talking about college students.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Dave Harding, and we'd like to try to wrap this up because we're way behind.
Okay, I'll try to make this brief. I'm a proud parent of 4 students who went to Timpanogos Elementary School, and let me just thank the district, but particularly the couple of principals that have been there and all of the teachers. They do an amazing job, and I do not feel that the quality of education that my children receive, I have no complaints there. I think they had wonderful experiences and were well prepared. The ones that have graduated, well prepared for life in the future. And so, I just wanted to say I think with the resources that the district generally and the schools specifically have, I think we have an amazing education system here. So thank you for that. And then I appreciated an email that I received today, and I think it went to both groups, from Shannon Bingham, quoting some school siting guidelines that was released by the federal government. And I think that there are some really good, just smart growth, quality, best practices of planning in that. And I think it talks about some of the impacts that school siting can have. And I guess the point I want to make with the couple of seconds I have left is that the city makes decisions that will impact where people live and where demographics go and whatnot, but the district does as well. And I think I appreciate opportunities like this to coordinate together, because I think both entities really can impact the viability and the health of our communities and how viable our schools are.
Thank you. All right, well, I think we better move on to item number 4. Many of these topics I'm sure we could spend a lot more time on. Item number 4 is an update on Timpview High School construction and replacement to be presented by Keith Ruttell, School District Superintendent. And again, as concise as you're able to be would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, Timpview High School reconstruction project of the academic wing primarily is underway now. There's a lot of clearing of property there. There's repurposing of property, some excavation, removal of asphalt, because on the north side, which is where the parking has mainly been in the past, that's where the new academic wing is going to go. Last spring, we finished, which was the first project of the reconstruction of it. It was the old second gym, and that is now completely finished. It is beautiful and it is structurally sound, and it's been in use since late springtime. And so that's done, and then we moved on to the full academic wing. A lot of that had to be funded a little bit differently, and the board has been well aware of the different projects that are going on up there. This is a phased project. You're well aware that State Risk Management was concerned about the current academic wing. They're regularly monitoring that for movement. They've got sensors all over the building, and so they're helping us manage that. And then when the new academic wing is complete, which is likely going to be close to 3 years from now, then we will do a major move of students and teachers and classrooms into that new wing, and the old portion will be demolished. This will be the first significant stage for the changes at Timpview that must take place. For the most part, we're not touching much in the area of athletics, and we're not touching anything that I can think of right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but in the area, in the fine arts section of the building, and then in the vocational wing, there's some smaller projects that are going on, but eventually those areas that I just mentioned are going to have to be redone as well, because they're having similar but not quite as accelerated challenges structurally. So the big challenge, of course, was mentioned earlier, that with the loss of a parking lot, students in high school do tend to drive, and they are having to park on the road. And I know that this is a strain on relations with neighbors and relations with the city, and even with the students and their families themselves, because sometimes, as you know, when students get to high school, families count on the students taking themselves, whether they're within a busing range or whether they're not. So anyway, it's proving to be a challenge. I feel very badly for the people who are living up there, because there will be a significant amount of inconvenience, and nobody would want to be the high school principal of Timpview right now, with all of these challenges that are going to exist there for the next 3 years. Any questions I can answer on that project? Okay, I put you to sleep. Thank you.
Keith, maybe one question. I hadn't heard 3 years before. Is that 3 years from now?
3 years from when we broke ground in June.
Okay. Did that surprise you when you got that, got the word on what it would take?
Well, it's not necessarily 3 years to build the new structure. That's part of it. But then a portion of this time is also spent demolishing the old building and making it safe and passable for all participants in the school. So the new structure will be ready to move into probably springtime in about 2.5 to 2, well, probably just a little under 3 years from now. But that depends, of course, on materials and those kinds of things. We are having challenges there. The cost of this project and the timing of this project is being impacted somewhat by the building material shortage that we're encountering.
Okay, thanks.
It's the same thing you've been hearing for other projects, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just a little surprised about the 3-year timetable.
Yeah.
How long did it take to build Provo High from scratch?
Provo High was 2 years, but it was built on a clean site. There was no need to work around existing buildings or even existing underground structures or those kinds of things. Everything there was new. The only thing that took a little extra time there was the piers that had to go in, and that same challenge is being addressed up at Timpview because of the movement of the soil.
Yeah. Okay, thanks and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Next item, and it looks like we're going to have to go a little past the hour here for those who are able to. Is an update on capital improvement plans for the Provo School District, again presented by Superintendent Rutel.
Okay, so we do have a 10-year plan that is in place. Portions of it are reviewed every year in March when the budget is being studied by the board, and also when the smaller projects like repaving of a parking lot or recarpeting a school or those kinds of things, that plan is available for review on a regular basis. Mark Wheeler just notified me that he's completed the latest updates on this as well. We'll be booking a time for him to present this to the board. Right now, the two projects that are most in focus in front of the board are Wasatch Elementary School rebuild and Dixon Middle School rebuild. And the board is having discussions about costs and funding challenges and locations. Interesting that our two remaining schools that have to be rebuilt both have the question about where is the best site for them. And lots of people have different opinions on that. And so the board is sifting that through. When that is finished, we do have to probably start to look at other projects down the road. The long-term planning includes at some point adding a fourth wing to Provo High School because of the amount of growth on the west side. Also, we have property out west in the northwest portion of the city, 11 acres, which we purchased from the Bunnell family. The day will come that we will need to add some type of educational facility out there, whether it's an elementary school, a middle school, or even possibly a different kind of school, such as a tech college of some kind. It could be any number of things. So we've just got to consider that the land is there for the future, and we'll have to plan accordingly when we get there. But that's probably short range. We didn't get to the Westridge, the big Westridge challenges that existed for the previous bond that failed about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago. So some changes have taken place at Westridge, funded with our own funds. We've displaced other projects to do some of that, but it still is going to be one of our older buildings as soon as Dixon and Wasatch are taken care of. I can keep going, but I know you're on the clock.
Just quickly, if I could interject, after the rebuild of Dixon, wherever that may be, what is your current projection about the need for a third middle school?
It really depends on the question about how large we want the student populations to be. Centennial Middle School is about 11 and change right now. And Dixon Middle School, I was just visiting with John Anderson, the principal, the other day, and I believe that he was expecting about 980, so nearly 1,000. Certainly there are middle schools that are much larger than that, and there are middle schools that are much smaller than that. I've been in districts with both of those. It really gets down to the size of the buildings and what they can tolerate, what they can hold, and then also in terms of the numbers of programs and types of programs that we want to have in them. If we wanted to use space more, I guess I should say more generously, by bringing in a broader range of programs and those kinds of things, We may need a third middle school sooner than later. If we do more bare bones programs, then right now I think we're on a good path. A lot of it does depend on growth throughout the city, and I think that's one of the reasons why we really are anxious to maintain a good open communication with the city about what kind of projects have been approved over time, so we can build that into our planning.
The reason I ask, of course, is because we're all anticipating a great deal of growth on the west side.
Yes.
And we need to have infrastructure for that in place. And so the sooner we get kind of at least a semi-clear signal for you that you think it's more imminent maybe than current thinking, better off we'll be in terms of trying to anticipate those infrastructure needs.
We've done a number of studies for projecting future populations for our schools. I will tell you the one that we did about 2 years ago when we were preparing for the previous bond, that previous bond, we were not really confident in some of the numbers that we saw. I mean, for example, at that particular time, Dixon was going to be, I don't remember how many students, but by the year 2030, it was going to be, don't hold me to this, but I thought it was almost twice as large as it was at the time. But we haven't seen that materialize, although it does tend to be a little bit of an up and down thing each year. So we've got to get a little bit more confident in the studies that and their results. And when I mentioned earlier, for example, a couple of years ago, Dixon really jumped in its student population. Part of that was we have a number of homes that were being occupied by multiple families. And so when I mentioned that earlier, it really does have an impact on us, and it is hard to gauge the actual need that's coming when those situations arise. I'm not trying to throw anybody out of their home. I'm just saying certain things make it easier and certain things make it harder for us to be able to anticipate these things.
Sure.
Bill, that middle school number has been our most unpredictable, and we've spent good money and we've got the worst numbers specifically on middle schools. And I think it has a little to do with that dynamic we see in the students, young families, and then high home prices. And so we get this transition of these mid families where the second job they move to somewhere else, but later maybe we get another high school family. And so our high school numbers and our elementary school numbers have been, when we ask a company to predict them, have been great, but our middle school numbers have been wildly off. And so it's been a challenge for us, and we have sort of just in our experience, a little bit of a dip, and our middle school numbers have been our most stable a little bit.
And in a lot of ways, McKay has pointed out to a number of people that, even though a couple of the charter schools around are not officially affiliated with the school district, as far as Provo goes, they do serve in some ways as an additional school within the system anyway. And so we do find that a number of students have been going to charter schools in the middle years, although they've been with us in the younger years and they come back to us in the high school years. So as much as we track that, it's an after the fact tracking. It's not something that we can actually project and maintain, even based on trends, past trends, because they really are so variable. But we're doing what we can to get there, and we'll continue to hammer away at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. I neglected to mention that Councillor Hoban joined us quite a while ago, very early in the discussion of our first item. We're now on to our last item, which is a discussion on how the council can better support schools in Provo. And this item is to be presented by School Board President Melanie Hall.
Thanks, Dave. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to have this meeting today. I appreciate these meetings and having the opportunity to have these types of discussions. The one thing that comes to my mind is, if as council members, if you're seeing something in your districts or your areas, don't hesitate to reach out to us as board members. we're happy to be here to help any of those types of things. I've appreciated those in the past that have reached out to me. So that's the one thing I guess I could say. And I guess I'll open it up to anybody else of how council members could support you better.
I'll say something. I mean, it's going off of council members Harding's comments on the safe routes to schools. That was, I don't think it can be overstated what a remarkable presentation that actually was, based on anyone that's been engaged in that for a long time. That was a remarkable presentation to see, not just talk, but some, tangible improvements, and the idea that making these safe routes a priority. Certainly it's a priority for us, and we've so appreciated how the city has been willing to look at the safety of kids on their way to school. That certainly helps us a tremendous amount. And it reflects, a nature of the partnership that we're actually going for in many respects. And so I just wanted to say that if we had a goal, what that looked like, that's our goal. And it seems like in this particular instant, it looks like it's going really well.
George?
Yeah, I would just sort of echo back what Melanie said. I've always felt great responsiveness from the board when I've reached out to individuals on the board. And for that matter, hopefully we are similarly responsive to your concerns and questions. Because there are a lot of things that, we get so focused on our issues that it sometimes these meetings are helpful to sort of help us remember the ways in which our responsibilities intersect and depend on each other. So I hope that you will likewise take the initiative when you feel a need to reach out to us and let us know what we can do.
Anyone else?
I just want to say I appreciate I can't remember what number it was that Jennifer and Shannon talked about with the types of housing and where they're built and how it impacts different schools. Obviously, we didn't have enough time to go more in depth into that, but I appreciate even the council bringing it up and saying that it's an issue, because it really is an issue. And I don't have all the answers, but I do think it's a discussion that needs to be had. It's a discussion that we need to look at that. And so I appreciate that being brought up and hope that we can continue that conversation. I think Shannon mentioned a committee, a building committee or something like that. It might be helpful if we could communicate about that. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate that and hope that will continue.
Shannon?
I just will respond to that. I think we could do a better job in Provo City of using data to drive some of our decisions, and certainly the school district is part of that. So maybe the housing committee, which I am over, can create some analysis, do some GIS digging, and kind of work in a collaborative way over the next few months with the school district to present some of the trends, discuss some of the trends that we're seeing, and maybe we need to bring that back to the full body of the board and the council to understand the scope of the issue.
And while we had people expressing gratitude for others, I know that Phil Yule from the city has really been helpful to us in helping us gathering information for planning in the future. So just a shout out to him.
Anyone else? Well, I think it would be hard to overstate the importance of our schools to our community and to its future. And while we're expressing appreciation, I'll just add mine to our school board and our school district staff for all you do, and we appreciate the opportunity to get together with you periodically and collaborate and discuss these issues. If there's no objection, we'll now adjourn by unanimous consent. Thank you.